Before I start as well, if you are interested in joining the Skills Forum, it is open to all, as both Cara and Nicola said. If you go to khub.net/resilience, you will get to the page and you can join it. And those questions will be going up on there as well on a kind of, what's the word? Like a Miro board, so people can keep on adding stuff to it as we go on, but that'll be coming soon. My name is Phil, for those of you who don't know me. I have been involved in this kind of stuff for a little while, Cara said, over a decade. I ran the scheme that Caroline started on. I worked on the schemes that Kate was talking about. I chair the Trailblazer that developed the apprenticeships, and I'm one of the vice chairs of the Degree Accreditation Committee. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I often feel a bit jaded because I feel we haven't got anywhere fast enough. But we've got, actually, as Cora said, small steps, but we've got a lot faster. And we're getting there. But the thing I wanted to talk about today really is one of the key themes of this session was about how we actually have legacy, move things along, have some impact when everything's really quite short term. And the things I'm going to talk about are things that exist that aren't them also quite short term, but we don't use them. So that's why we've got the world's worst archaeologist, Indiana Jones, staring at this thing right in front of him and just going, he could actually be using it. So just a bit of context. I work for Historic England. One of the things we really try and promote across the sector is to get people to think about employability and careers and skills development in the round. This works, yeah. And we just really promote this really simple model of getting people to think about when you're thinking about skills, when you think about careers, think about it in these tiers: aware, prepare, enter, sustain. And think about them together. Don't just think, oh, I'm going to do this one thing that's just going to impact this one little bit. Think about what the next step is, how that feeds in. So every time I do a presentation, I just make sure I put up the model. Steal the model, use it, develop your own stuff with the model. It is not mine, just use it. But it's really simple. It's just about thinking about how you get people to actually engage with heritage and understand that there is careers in it, how you get them practical taster opportunities, get the hands-on preparation, how they actually then enter the workforce, but in a structured way through training programs, and then how do you actually sustain that workforce? How do you actually get them to develop, to move up, to further their career, to keep on? So, context. We actually have a skills system. In England, particularly, I will be talking about England, as Cora said, it's devolved. Governments change the skills system all the time, but actually, realistically, it's not that much. The kind of key things don't change that much, but the initiatives do. But the latest version comes from what the government put out in 2021 in the Skills for Jobs white paper. And that's how the current government, wherever we think of them, we're going to change post-16 education. Interestingly, what's written down on paper is actually quite interesting. There's a real focus on stronger engagement with employers, making skills training much more about what employer needs are, looking at local skills and looking at lifelong learning, which actually all sounds great. Now, the system's by no means perfect, but it has been developed over a couple of years, and actually now there are quite a few government skills programs and initiatives, things like skills boot camps, sector work-based academies, flexibilities within the apprenticeship system, higher technical qualifications. Some of these things you may have heard of, others you like, what are you talking about? They're relatively short-term training and development opportunities, and they're supposed to be built around employer need. So I'm going to have a quick look at a few of them and hopefully give some examples of where they're being used elsewhere. But the key point is, none of them are being used in archaeology. Very few of them are being used in heritage broadly. And so that is my question, why? So let's start with skills boot camps. What are skills boot camps? This really simple. It's a 16-week practical course, training at between level 3 and 5. We talked a bit about levels before. It can be online, it can be face-to-face, it can be blended. But the key point is they are for people over 19. They can be in work, they can be self-employed, they can be unemployed, they can be people returning to work. But it's a 16-week practical course, and it is delivered between a training provider in partnership with an employer. It costs nothing, free to the learner, free to most employers to be involved with it. Sometimes there's a between 10 and 30% cost, but we can go into that later. But for those individuals, they're going to get a course designed to sector-specific skills, and it should actually be aligned to employer-led standards. Now, given that we have apprenticeships in England, we now have what the skills system classed as employer-led standards. All the apprenticeships are based on them. They also get a job interview on completion. And actually, they're also really good as a pathway to what's called an accelerated apprenticeship. I won't go into it now, but we can talk about it later. For an employer, this is a way where you can fill job vacancies and almost use it as a kind of pre-tester to who gets the job in your place, because they've done this course and you can see how good they are. You can also use it to upskill your existing workforce. So it's delivered by a training provider, but in partnership with an employer. There's two ways to do it. There's national suppliers and there's regional suppliers through regional funding. This is a thing that the DFE use. It's their own internal assessment. I'm sure it's fine to share it, of when's a skills bootcamp something suitable. But basically, does the sector have evidence of a skills shortage? Is training likely to plug that gap? Are other training offers available that target the same people? Are the skills you want between level 3 to 5? Can you do it in about 16 weeks? And can you support training and guarantee job interviews? Appreciate that's the one that's going to be tricky. And do you, can someone deliver it? But that's where a skills bootcamp could come in. So how's this being used? Well, this is my current favorite example. This has just started, so I don't know how well it's gone. Don't know if you can see it, but a lot of the skills bootcamps have been focused so far on the construction industry, but also what they call green skills. So there is one on heritage and conservation. This particular course, the people are going to learn heritage building, conservation in context, regulatory and legislative frameworks, heritage construction techniques, reuse, adaptation of heritage buildings, and retrofit. And they're the things they're going to learn on this 16-week course. It's going to be very practical. And the idea is then they can potentially go and work for companies that do heritage conservation. This has been delivered by Nottingham Trent University, and they'll be working with a whole bunch of employers around their area. Most of the others, I say, have been construction. There's been a lot in digital. And there's also been a big influx now on what they call creative industries. And what's really interesting for us is heritage comes under the creative industries. So we can tap into that as well. Okay, next one. Sector work-based academies, SWAPs. So what are these? Well, these are courses of up to 6 weeks. They can either be in a classroom, including sort of virtual classroom, or they can be on the job, or they can be a mix. They all include a module, a pre-employment module, and then they all include some practical work experience with an employer. But they're particularly for unemployed people on various benefits. Another one that is free to take part in, free for employers to work with. You get that practical work experience, you get that employability training, you get either an interview with an employer or help with an application, so the employer does not have to give them an interview like they do with a bootcamp. For employers, it's a potential whole new pool of candidates that you know have been doing a specific training program aligned with what you want. And it's delivered by an employer, a training provider, and they work with the local job centre to get the candidates. So, who's been doing this? Well, interestingly, there's been a heritage one of these as well, but not in archaeology. This was done by the Landmark Trust, and they did a 6-week programme in 2022 at Calverley Old Hall. And they did a load of sort of practical skills-based work with those people: stonemasonry, joinery, bricklaying, lime plastering, carpentry, interview skills, CV writing, applying for jobs. They actually had full-time paid apprenticeships at the end that they were able to offer. So that was a real incentive for people. That was 2 of those people could go on to get that apprenticeship. But swaps could be a really great kind of pre-apprenticeship model as well. If people are thinking about apprenticeships and they want something to test people to see if they're right for their apprenticeship or their job, why not look at a swap? This was done, I say, it was Cavalier Hall, it was Leeds College of Building who worked with Landmark Trust to do it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've heard they found some of it quite difficult to deal with, and a lot of that was the bureaucracy of working with the job centre and the DFE, but we've not looked at it. Flexibility within apprenticeships. So we've heard a lot about apprenticeships today and been a lot of interest, which is fantastic. Some of you may have seen last year, I put out some research that Historic England had commissioned on employers' barriers to taking on apprentices, to offering apprenticeships. One of the big things that often came up was concerns around offering the amount of work for the full amount of time in an apprenticeship. Apprenticeship has to last 12 months. Most ask for 12 to 18, different levels, like the level 7s are sort of up to 3 years. It can often be difficult for people to say, I'll take someone on a contract and I'm going to have that work for that amount of time. But what is available is what are called flexi-job apprenticeships. Now, this particular model uses an agency. And this is actually a model that's been around for quite a while, but the government's redressed it and given it more money. So it's a normal apprenticeship, but what happens is an agency employs the apprentice and then arranges placements with host businesses. It can be for anybody. It's exactly the same as a normal apprenticeship. The agency charges a fee to the hosts. So that fee covers the apprenticeship wages for the time they're with them and some costs for managing it, overseeing it, dealing with all the bureaucracy, dealing with the training provider, doing all the sort of admin bit. So apprentices get to do an apprenticeship. That's what they get out of it. But they also get a range of experience with different hosts, which I think for archaeology could be really interesting, that people get to find out what different kind of units do, what different parts of the sector do. They also get enough work to make sure they can meet their input assessment competencies. Employers get to take on apprentices without worrying about long-term contracts or enough work to cover all the needs. Someone else is dealing with the admin, and the candidates are trained for the jobs with experience across different organisations. So it's a really interesting concept. Again, not one we have yet looked at in heritage. Is done a lot in construction. So these are the main agencies who do this. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of them. And they're all doing this, and as far as I can tell, seems to be working out quite well for the construction industry. This is just Track, who are one of the things. These are their main contractors. So they've got 6 main contractors they work with who all use this scheme with them. So if that's something we were interested in, that's something we need to do. We need to come together, different units, different organisations, and go, well, actually, yeah, we could do this together. But we're not doing it. One of the last things, higher technical qualifications. This is slightly different. This is something that government's really pushing at the moment, is basically any qualification at level 4 or 5 that is technically based. So that can include things like foundation degrees, HNCs, HNDs. But the point is they need to have been developed against these employer standards. And as I say, we've got some, so that's helpful. Most don't require a work placement. It's a qualification which will have a training course attached. But a lot of those will want you to do like an employer-based project. So it's good for career starter. It's also good for anyone looking to upskill or retrain. What does it cost? Good question. Talk about that later. But someone does it, gets a qualification, and the confidence that the skills are what employers want. Employers can use it to support upskilling existing trainees, or use it as another thing they look for when they're looking to hire somebody. And it's delivered by formal training providers the way any qualification would be. You probably can't read it, so don't worry about it, but it's just a little article about Bolton College and the NHS in that area have been working on particularly digital, actually, high technical qualifications rather than, say, health and social care ones, but working together to establish what those are and delivering them, and it's having real success for the NHS in the Bolton area. So I had a quick look at well, what qualifications currently exist in Archaeology and Heritage at level 4 and 5, outside of apprenticeships, for example. And these were the only real two I could find on the, there's a website that tells you what qualifications exist and where you get the funding for them. Unfortunately, neither of them are approved to be HTQs. It's a bit of a problem. However, as I said, we already have these occupational standards. We've developed them for the apprenticeships. We've got the level 4 Historic Environment Advice Assistant occupational standard. We've got the level 7 Archaeological Specialist occupational standard. So, profile exists. The question is, would development of an HTQ using these profiles to help develop it be something we should be looking at in archaeology as another option for people to develop their skills? Quickly want to end with something we're always all thinking about is how is this kind of stuff funded? Now, I'm giving you some information, a lot of that stuff's free because the government funds it, right? But Nicola mentioned things like local skills improvement plans. So if anyone didn't get that, what these are is the government decided that the country needs to determine what its local skills needs are. There are 38 groups of parts of the country. Now that sounds really vague, but I can't say they're based on local authority areas. I can't say they're based on anything because they're literally just, this part of the country said, we'll group together. That's how it works. But they've all come up with these plans that says these are what our local skills priorities are for our area. So Cheshire West, Chester, and Warrington have one, for example. I think I've got a picture of it in a minute. Well, that's it. And they've all done these priorities. Now, we're much too late to the party to have influenced these. These were out, a year or so ago, and they were developing before then. But they're out, and they're there now. And they've all got these priorities. Now, on the screen, if you can see it, this is one of the key priorities for the Cheshire one, which is on low carbon, including green skills occupations. And it's got things about housing energy efficiency, voltaics, low carbon heat pumps, carbon capture, natural capital, and things like that. So my challenge for us as the archaeological profession is, how do we make archaeology fit into these local skills priorities? Because, again, if you can read it, there is millions of pounds being invested in this. So all of these local skills improvement plans have access to local skills improvement funding, which is designed to help you achieve the plan. There's also things like the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. That can be used, for example, to resource the coordination of local employers together to get together to look at how they might address things, and then maybe, I don't know, do a boot camp, do a skills work, a swap. So we need to start thinking more creatively, and we need to collaborate, because there's money there and there's schemes there that will actually help us, but we're not using them. The other thing is adult education budgets. A lot of training gets delivered through adult education budgets, and because of devolution, those budgets are becoming bigger and much more regional. That was my example. So if you can read it again, it's a bit blurry, but this shows you the MVQ diploma in wood occupations, and this tells you what you can get what will fund it. So 16 to 19 education funding will fund that. Adult skills budgets will fund that. Community learning budgets will fund that. MCA and GLA, that's the Manchester Combined Authority and the Greater London Authority. They already have their own budgets. They can fund that. OLAS, I don't think exists, but it was to do with ex-offenders, tailored learning. So there's a whole bunch of things that can fund that qualification, but as I said before, we don't have any HTQs, but we could do. And then this one I just added in because of the conversation we had this morning. The New Futures Network is a particular specific government scheme that is aimed to provide job opportunities for existing and ex-offenders. Thanks, Caroline. That started that off, so I thought best to add it in. So it's either people released on temporary licence or employment on release, serving prisoners and prison leavers aged 18 and over. So it doesn't cost you anything, but it's about giving an employment opportunity to these people. And there's this whole network, New Futures Network, that is there to help you and support you in it. So it's another thing we could be thinking about. So back to my original question, all this stuff is here, so why aren't we using it? So that is a bit of a challenge, but it's also a genuine question. Why aren't we using this stuff? Why aren't we using it? Is it about money? Is it about time? Is it just about a lack of understanding? We don't know it's there. Is it about a lack of collaboration? We're not doing it, or we maybe not willing to actually say, go to the next competitor and say, actually, maybe we should work together. So that's my question to you all. All the stuff is here. Why aren't we utilising it? I do have a little thing to do, which we might do in the bits. If people fancy it, it could be quite helpful to me. I thought a really simple thing to do would be like a SWOT analysis. So I took something like skills boot camps. You could think about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats for archaeology of one of them. But we might not want to do that. We might just want to have a chat. Thank you.